So we are going to get back into this. I've given it a little bit of time to dry. So the first thing I'm going to do, I still don't think that my moon's dry yet, but I think my water should be dry enough to try to brighten up a little bit underneath that moon to try to get some more streaks in there. So part of me thinks that I shouldn't touch it because I actually think it looks really nice the way it is now, but I want to push it just a little bit further because I think it could look really nice. So that's one thing in painting, is that you're always afraid to add more, but it's just paint. I say that a lot. It's just paint. So give it a try, see what happens. If I don't like how it turns out, I can always just blend it back in and kind of turn it back into what it already was. So I did actually switch to a slightly smaller brush. It's still a square-ended brush, but it's probably about half the size of the brush that I was using. So there we go. I'm taking pure white paint and I'm going to just do these horizontal streaks kind of under where the moon is. And I'm scratching very, very lightly so that these turn out kind of feathery. I don't want them to be super bright, intense white. I want them to be kind of subtle, which can be a little hard to do. Subtle can be easier said than done. So let's see, that's not really showing up at all. Let's get a little less subtle with a little more paint. So keep them horizontal, and I want it to look like the moon is bouncing off the water. There we go. And then they're going to kind of fade as they go down. So something like that. I don't know, it's all right. Let's get a little brighter with it in a couple places and see what we think. I'm kind of building up the brightness so that if it's not turning out how I wanted, I can kind of just stop and blend it in. But I'm on the verge of doing too much here. Am I off center? Is my moon over here? It's a little hard to paint from the side. Ideally, you would be right in front of this. I don't know. Something like that. If I want to, I can always come back later and add more. Let's do that. I want to feather them out a little on the edges. They're looking a little... Oh, now I'm doing too much. Okay, I need to just stop. All right. Okay, yeah, we'll go with that for now. All right. So we did that. All right, let's give that moon another quick fill with pure white now that I have a slightly smaller brush. I'm going to try to run this over just a couple times and then let it be. And if it ends up not 100% pure white, that's okay too. It's really hard to get pure white once you've laid other colors underneath it, but it doesn't need to be pure white to look like a moon. Sometimes it's best too if it's white with some streaks of gray or even little specks of gray, and then it looks more like a moon. So sometimes what I'll do, and I'll show you this up close. Now I don't think that this painting is going to need this because it's going to have some other stuff going on, but I paint it pure white and then I'll take my finger, now I'm using my left hand for this, I'll take my finger and I'll kind of smudge, 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 smudge. And what that does is it creates almost like craters, which is very hard to see, which again is why I'm saying I don't think you need to do that, because in this painting, this is going to be covered by a lot of other stuff. So just a little trick on the moon if you wanted to do that. This painting doesn't need it, but if the moon was like the focal point, or if it was really, really large in your painting, or if you just want your moon to look a little bit more special, smudge with your fingers to create craters and depth. But there we go, my slightly oval shaped moon, but that's okay. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work on my tree. So my tree is gonna go over here and it's gonna kind of be bending like into the painting. So I have this vision of this tree that almost looks like it's growing up and then it's being kind of blown this way. So for this, I am gonna switch brushes. So I am gonna grab a brush that has a teardrop type shape. So a shape like this, shaped like this. So I definitely wanna get my brush nice and soggy and wet. And I'm gonna do this tree with pure black, and it's gonna be a little hard to see, but then I'm gonna come in with white and give it highlights and stuff. So it'll be just a little bit hard to see at the beginning, and then it'll get easier to see as I work. This one, I got it nice and wet, and I'm gonna get my black paint. I'm gonna make like a puddle of almost like ink. And again, don't probably do this with tempera paint, but With acrylic paint, this works really well. So I want to make a puddle of super wet paint, not as wet as when I was splatter painting or speckle painting with the white, but I want it to be pretty wet. So I'm going to take this kind of inky puddle type paint, and I'm going to start by just putting my tree trunk on here. So I want the center of it, and again, my hill is pure black, so we're not going to actually see this tree at all until I get the white highlights on there. But I'm going to start this kind of like right here. Just draw a line. You'll notice that my line is not straight. It's not supposed to be. Trees are not straight. It's also not as thick as it needs to be, but I'm going to come back and thicken it a little bit later. So what I'm going to do with this larger brush is I'm going to set up my main branches. So I do want to branch. Do you see how I made the letter Y? It's the letter Y. And then I'm going to make the letter Y kind of coming off. Don't make it come off the same spot. I call those chicken feet trees. So I want this one to maybe branch off right there. See how they're not coming out of the same place? They're coming out of different places. If it comes off the same place, then it has like a W instead of a Y, and then it looks like a chicken foot. I'm going to have a lot more coming off of this side than this side. So let's go ahead and just add a couple more over here. I'm going to turn this into the letter Y now. And let's make this go higher. Okay, so with a brush like this, the way that I get these pointy ends is I start with really wet paint. I lay my brush down with barely any pressure, and then I press harder, press harder, press harder as I get up to what I'm trying to do. So let me add a few more main branches off on this end, and then I'm going to switch to that smaller brush. But again, I want this to start kind of bending this way. I need something in the middle here. Let's do maybe like that. Okay, now it looks a little spooky, like a Halloween tree, which I like Halloween. So I want another branch coming off, but it's gonna have to be a little lower. I don't want it coming off the same point that one did, so I'm gonna make this one long. Okay, there we go. All right, so that one went nice and long. So I'm gonna have the majority of this tree kind of swooping over this way. So let's do a couple more branches with this brush. Ooh, I made it really thick there. So one thing I always say is make sure that it gets, the thickest point of the tree shouldn't be on a branch. The thickest point should be the trunk. So I made it thicker here. Let's go ahead and thicken the rest of that branch and thicken the trunk as well. So I usually save the thickening of the branches until I have them all on there, because I don't really know how thick they need to be until I have all my branches on there. This branch right here is way too thin. Don't worry, I will be making that thicker. And then I start looking for empty spots. Do you see this spot right here? It's way too empty. I'm gonna add a little more water to my paint, and we're gonna do like that. Okay. So I'm adding these branches. I want it to look almost windswept. So I'm gonna switch to that smaller brush because this one's getting a little too big for what I'm trying to do. And another thing I would say is that I'm really good at getting very skinny ends to my branches, but really it's not important that you do that because we're going to be covering a lot of these with leaves. So don't worry about how skinny or thick the ends of your branches are. I'm actually going to extend this one further. And I don't make any straight lines in my tree. None. No straight lines. That doesn't exist in a tree, and it shouldn't be in my painting. And so if you're stressing because none of your lines are straight, then you're doing the right thing. Something I like to do is when I'm getting out to the ends of the branches, I like to crisscross them like this, because I just think it looks a little bit more whimsical. I have this big empty space right here where nothing's growing, so I'm gonna let's do this. Ooh, I'm not sure I like that one. So let's change it up a little bit. So let's say you make a branch like this one where I'm just not a fan of that. I'm gonna add more to it and hope that it looks a little bit more natural. We need something coming out here. Okay, I like that one out better already. I think I don't like the end here. I was trying to curve it and it didn't work for me. Let's do that. Okay, there we go. I fixed it. All right, this tree's looking a little bit more spooky than I had planned for it to. I'm not trying to do like a scary tree, but once we get all the color leaves on there, I think it'll be a lot more friendly of a tree. Sometimes I like to make them go around the moon, and sometimes they get close. Let's see. I kind of just let the painting tell me what it's going to do, and if they're not going to stretch that far without looking really weird, then I'm just not going to force it. So let's kind of fill this stuff in and then see what it looks like. I need to add a little bit here. A little more water. let's see, these two, another thing I look for is, are any of my branches doing the exact same thing? And these two almost look like they're copies of each other, so I'm going to change one of them. So like that, and then maybe this one goes like that. That is probably really hard for you guys to see, but that's okay. So this one almost faded to nothing. But again, we're working on an almost black background, so the tree is kind of supposed to be hard to see. All right, so I want to do one coming down here. There we go. And it's a little too straight for me, so let's add some branches. Still looking pretty straight. Let's do, okay, that helped. All right, the trunk is looking a little puny. There we go. And then we'll worry about the roots when we get there. This is kind of a large empty area here, but do we like that? Nah, it's too much, too much. Let's do one in the middle. Oh yeah, okay. Every time I add a branch, I feel like there's another spot that needs to be filled in, but this is where I have my, my too much moments, where I just do too much. I don't know, I don't like this large empty space and this large empty space. Let's do one here. Oh, I lost it. Okay, right here. Okay. Do I have enough over here? No, let's do that, and then maybe one more branch over here. Not that you can really see this, but you will. Oh, I have these two large empty spaces here. Let's do this. Okay, so we have a tree, and we have, oh, we have a water drip. That's interesting. Where did that come from? You probably can't see that, but it's kind of cutting through my paint. You can see it a little bit right there. I'm not sure where that came from because it was a white water drip. Boo, that's all right. Okay, so let's thicken up this tree trunk, make it some roots. This is gonna be extremely hard to see until I get the white paint on there, but I can see where it's wet versus where it's dry. Maybe you can too, probably not though. All right, so to make this tree extra, to give it a little something more, I'm gonna take my brush, I'm gonna dip in the white paint, and it kind of makes a gray because there was already black on my brush. And so basically what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna just highlight by just running skinny lines, skinny choppy lines in my trunk, in my branches, and in everything. So basically I'm just highlighting. If you wanted to be very technical about this, like exactly perfectly right, then the side closer to the moon should be the side that's highlighted. But with these extremely skinny branches, that is not really worth your time to try to highlight a certain side. I would just kind of run your brush through the branch, see where your brush decides to leave the paint, and just leave it at that. So the only place where I really go back and do extra highlighting is the tree trunk, where I sometimes try to make it look like the texture of a tree by doing these choppy lines. This is where earlier I said I don't like doing choppy lines, I like doing long lines. But on a tree trunk, I like doing choppy lines because it looks more like tree bark. So I do that, and then down here on the roots, I just make it kind of pointy, almost like it's tree's fingers grabbing the ground, which not every tree looks like that, but some do. So however you want to end your tree is fine, but probably the only way I would not end a tree is a straight line across, which you could do, but I just don't end my trees that way because I feel like more often than not they have a little something going on down there. That might be a bit much, but that's okay. All right, so I'm going to finish highlighting these branches. Don't overdo it. And again, these are very skinny lines, choppy, and sometimes your brush is going to skip and not leave a line, and that's fine too. But if you want your branch to be seen, sometimes you got to give it a little highlight. So another tip I give people is if you have a branch you don't like at all, just don't highlight it, and we're not really going to look at it. So any branch that you were not a fan of, you drew it and you were like, ooh, that's ugly, just don't highlight it, and it'll probably fade away, and you won't even remember that it's there. Ooh, that one got a little bright, that's right. And another thing to remember as well is that we're going to be putting leaves on top of this too. So this is not final step stuff, this is just the next step. Okay, if any of yours are too bright, like maybe this one here is a little bit too bright for me, pick up a little bit more black on your brush and just work in reverse, where you're almost like not erasing it, but just making it a little bit more subtle. There we go. Subtle means it doesn't jump out at you as much right away. Okay. I'm about to do too much. I have the too much curse, where I'm always trying to do too much. You won't know if it's time to stop until you've done too much. And then you'll be like, oh, I should have stopped 6 times ago, 6 brush strokes ago. But you learn that with time. All right, let's see. Let's take a step back and let's look at it. It is not looking as windswept as I had hoped that it would. It's looking a little bit more like a spooky tree. Maybe we will fix that when we put our leaves on. Maybe when we put the leaves on, we can have the leaves look windswept. Maybe that's what we'll do. Okay, so we at this point need to go ahead and let our tree dry, because our next step is leaves. So I'll come back when our tree is dry. All right, so I've let my tree dry a little bit. They really don't take that long to dry when the lines are so skinny. So what I'm gonna do now is I am going to put all of my leaves on my tree, but I'm gonna do it with white paint first. And the reason for that is that if I try to put a yellow leaf right here, that is not gonna show up. It's gonna be totally see-through and it's gonna show the black through. So actually this is a good step, and it makes it a lot easier when it's time to color them in a lot of different ways. So I'm gonna use that kind of teardrop shaped brush that I used for my tree. And the reason why I do this is because I want a brush where all I have to do is press and I get a leaf shape. So I'm gonna take my brush. I like to hold this back here instead of up here. When I'm painting really carefully, I like to paint up here, but when I'm doing things that I wanna look loose and organic, I'm gonna hold it back here and I'm gonna press. And it's kind of a leaf shape. I'm gonna press. One thing you'll notice too is that I'm not really sticking to the branches. I'm not trying to put these exactly on top of branches. I'm just kind of floating them around the branches, and sometimes they're covering them and sometimes they're hovering next to them. Sometimes they're not even attached to anything. So I'm kind of turning my brush depending on where I want the pointy part. Now keep in mind too that you're going to be putting color on top of this. So this is not exactly what it's going to look like, but it's going to look something like this. If you have any branches that you don't love how the end turned out, just make sure to cover the end with a little blob like that. So I'm going to spend some time just kind of putting all these leaves on here. And again, just try not to be too careful by like exactly lining the edges of a branch. You just want to kind of plop these on there. I'm not even really looking at my branches. I know my tree's in this general area, so I'm just going to kind of plop some leaves. Oh, that one's huge. That's all right. Pretty much everywhere. One thing I can do if I made it too big is I can make it look like 2. And then when I put colors on it, I can put 2 colors there. So I'm gonna put a bunch up against the tree and on the branches. But then again, kind of going with that windswept look, windswept look that I was going for. I also want to have some that look like they are kind of fluttering away. So let's just say that that's all I'm gonna do. Again, it's easy to go overboard. You won't know if you've done too many until you've officially done them and it's too much. So I don't know, I'll probably add more than that. But okay, so let's say I wanted the windswept thing. So now is where I can make it look like some of them have kind of floated off. And I like to let these get a little bit smaller as they go. And I want it to kind of look like they kind of floated that way. Don't make perfect rows. I kind of made this too perfect. So I'm gonna do like maybe some down here. And again, I'm still making it a little too perfect. And by too perfect, what I mean is that they look like they're in rows. So let's make a few that look like they've landed on the water too. Wouldn't that be cute? So let's do, maybe they're kind of floating down here. Technically, these should be a little bit larger if they're closer to you, or larger if they're further down, and then they should be really small back here. So let's make it look like some of them have fallen in the water. That'll be cute. Oh, and maybe some of them should be on my little hill here. Let's do that. Maybe one of them's leaning on the trunk, or two. That'll be cute. All right, so let's see. Maybe I want one really close to the moon. There we go. It's so hard not to make them in perfect rows. I'm trying not to, but it happens. So again, bigger as they're down closer, smaller as they go back. Small. All right. Let's see. Let's do a few more in the tree, or at least close to it. I want it to look really nice and full. I'm going to try to use all the colors of the rainbow. So I need to have kind of a lot of leaves so that I have room for that. So let's put a bunch of these on here. You can do as much or as little as you want. Of course, you can always add more once you have your first round of color done. Let's say that you put as many as you thought you wanted and then you didn't have enough to make purple, for example, because you did rainbow order and you ran out before purple. You can just add more white ones and then add the purple. Do I want some going over the moon or do I want it only under? I don't know. I guess if the wind was blowing, some would be over the moon. Let's do that. Let's have some going over and try not to make it look too perfect. There we go. All right, so right now it just looks kind of like a mess. That's all right. So another thing I'm trying to decide is if when I do my color, if I want to do red, orange, yellow and make it look like it's changing, or do I want it to be random? So that's something I'm gonna have to, ooh, that's big. Something I'm gonna have to decide before we get there. One thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it more full in the tree so that I think I overdid all these out here. So I need to add more to the tree so that you can kind of see where they're coming from. I think that it just looks like I threw a bunch of leaves at it. So let's make the tray more full so that we understand that's where they came from. And, okay, are we there? Again, I am just the worst example of doing too much, but I think that will be okay right there. Maybe I want one down here on that side. Don't want to neglect that side. Okay. All right, so we now have to let these dry so that we can do our colors on top of it. So let's do that and see where we're at when we come back. One little tiny thing. This looks a little weird. Not filled in. Okay. Maybe that. I should just stop. All right. There we go. All right. I'll come back when they're dry. So the white has dried to a level that I'm okay with. Some of them might still have like a glob of white paint that's still wet just because it was pretty thick. So what I have done is squeezed a bit of paint of all the rainbow colors, and you really don't need much of these. And something else that I talked about in the introduction is that you do not have to do this with paint. You could cover this white paint probably the easiest with oil pastel. After that, you could try crayon for sure. You could possibly do marker. I've never tried marker on top of a paint, but you could try that. But I think oil pastel would be a really good solution if you don't have colors of paint. So if all you want to use is black and white paint and then you want to do the rest of this with something else, oil pastel would be a wonderful option for you. So I have my colors here and I tried to get the brightest possible version of each color. And my purple, I don't like the purples that I have, so I mixed two of them together to make a purple that I like. So I decided that what I'm gonna do is, when I originally started this, my plan was to just do like random rainbow across. But I think what I've decided that I wanna do is like red, kind of up here, and then orange, and then yellow and green, and then blue and purple. And what I don't want to do is make too perfect of stripes, so I'm going to pick up red first on my brush, same brush that I used to make them, and I'm going to cover, I'm just kind of putting it over top of the white, and I'm going to leave some of these, I'm not going to cover each and every single one, because I want it to look like the colors are changing kind of naturally, which would mean that some of the orange would be in here too. So I'm going to cover most of them again in kind of this like pattern like this. As far as the ones down here and the ones that are floating away, I'm gonna wait to do those until I have most of these done, just so I can see what it's looking like, and then I can decide on those. One thing you'll notice is that I'm not being too particular about covering just the white or exactly the white. I'm getting close, but I'm not too worried, because if I get outside the white, you can't really see it anyway. And if I don't cover all of it, then I just have a little bit of highlight. Let's see, so I want to cover enough to get this kind of arch thing going on. So let's do, let's do a couple up here. But again, I want to leave some to be orange. Does that look right? Let's see. I can always come back and kind of do some that are half red and half orange. But the plan is to do most of these red. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for that. I do want to give my brush a quick rinse between colors, because I'm trying to make them look nice and bright. So there's my red. Let's pick up the orange. And my brush is still pretty wet. I should have dried it just a little bit better. And I'm actually getting some, I can see drips waiting to happen off my red ones. Let me just clean those up real quick. Wouldn't be the biggest deal if it dripped, because it would be hard to see, but I still try to fix water drips when I see them happening. I probably should have given my brush a nice squeeze instead of just a quick swipe on the towel. Oh, yep. Maybe I can dry it right now. That's all right, these things happen. Let's see, so I want to get like a rounded shape, so I want to leave that one so it can be yellow. So let's go like this. So we'll do, I want that one to be yellow too. Let's do this kind of rounded thing. Okay. And then make sure you're not doing too much, because then you won't have any space for your purple, you know? Because we have 6 colors to do, so just think of that in your mind when you're doing it. Think, okay, do I have enough room for 6 more colors? Well, that looks pretty, okay. Oops, okay, so I picked up a little bit of red on my brush as well as yellow, so you can see that one's like half red and half yellow. I actually kind of like that, but that's not really what I'm going for, so I'm gonna leave that one, but I am gonna go ahead and give my brush a quick rinse, quick dry. Squeeze it on my towel. Squeeze it on my towel. Okay. All right, let's see. So by the time I'm done with the yellow, since that's my 3rd color out of 6, I should be about halfway done covering my leaves. If I'm much further than that, which I think I might be, then I need to start making them a little bit smaller so that I'm not doing too much. So let's start, maybe not too big. Let's see. Maybe extend some of them. Extend some of them out here. But let's see, a couple more. Because again, I want some of my green ones to come into the yellow. Oh, maybe about, oh, that one got real messy. That's all right. It's kind of like it's glowing. Alright, so there's that. Let's give the brush a quick rinse. If you can hear my TV, Harry is battling the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. He's currently winning. Okay, so let's do green. I guess I shouldn't spoil this movie for anyone who hasn't seen it or read it. Okay. So let's do green. I love this green. It's so bright and so pretty. All right, so now we're doing green. And, okay. Oh, let's see. Trying to get this rounded shape, but I want to leave some to make blue. Oh, okay, so let's do some that are floating away. Let's do do that one green. Give it a kind of a rounded shape. Again, I'm not going to do any of these yet. I kind of want those to be pretty random. Let's do that one. Do we have enough? Starting to feel like we have a little too much red, but that's okay because we'll figure that out once we're all the way done. There's like no green in here. Okay, so let's clean the brush. And let's go to blue. My purple and green are kind of gobbling up my blue on my plate. I'm tilting it too much. So one thing about the cool toned colors like the blues, greens, and purples is that when you're working on a dark background, the cool tone colors like blue and purple tend to be a little darker just by their nature, and so they can be a little bit harder to see. So if you're finding that your blue and your purple are not showing up very well, you can just add a little bit of white to them to make them really pop, because unless you have a really bright version of blue and a really bright version of purple, they are going to be a little bit harder to see. So just keep that in mind when you're working. If you're like, well, I can't see these at all. One thing is mixing white into it, and the other thing is just using a brighter version of it. So let's get these all blue. So we're kind of running out of space here, which was kind of what we intended. Maybe I intended to have a little more space left, but that's all right. Let's leave those to be purple, and then we'll start like maybe doing, these will be purple here on the end, but let's do, while we have blue on our brush, let's do some of these blue. Not too many because I want those to be kind of random. And let's see, we'll have that one blue. Okay, so I'm visualizing if these are purple and a couple of those are purple. Okay, that'll work. All right, so let's do that one right there. All right, so let's clean our brush. Dry it off. And let's do purple. A very pretty purple, but it's also very dark against a dark background, so just be real careful with the purple. It's a very dark color, so make sure that you can see it against your background colors. It probably helps that it's over the brightest part of the sky instead of the darkest part of the sky, but still it can be a little hard to see your purple, so just make sure that you're mixing white in if you need to. My purple is actually coming out a little bit more see-through than I thought that it would. That could be the quality of paint that I'm using. But usually when you mix two paints together, it makes it less see-through. This appears to be more see-through, which is interesting. All right, so I have finished like my tree leaves. One thing I want to do is, oh, this is too much green right in here. Let's just cover one of those with purple. Well, that didn't work, but that's all right. It kind of erased it. I intended for it to turn purple, but it was obviously still wet, and that didn't happen. That's fine. All right, so I still have purple on the brush. Let's do some of these purple. Not all of them. We want to make them all the colors. Let's do that one. It's still pretty close. And maybe that one. All right, and then because I have purple on the brush, let's do maybe this one here. And maybe, I don't want it to look like it's attached to the tree, so let's leave that one alone. Let's do this one. All right, so I feel like if I added it to the ones on the ground, it wouldn't make any sense because they're blowing that way. So I don't feel like any purple ones would circle back this way. So I don't know, maybe this one on the very edge, but let's just do this one. Okay. If I don't like it, I can cover it with white and do it again. All right, so I'm cleaning my brush, and I am drying my brush. And then I need to turn all these white ones another color, so let's go back to red. And it would make the most sense for the ones right under the red to be red. Now I'm not gonna do exactly every one of them red. But I can do that one right there. Maybe I want a red one in the water. And since I already feel like I have enough red, I'm just gonna do one more. Maybe that one there. And then I'm done with red. So let's clean our brush, dry our brush, and let's pick up some orange. Let's do this one. And just personally, orange is not my favorite color. If I'm not doing a rainbow painting, you're not gonna see much orange from me, just because it's just not my personal favorite, but it's part of the rainbow, so I'm gonna include it. There we go. All right, we're starting to fill them up. Let's clean the brush, dry the brush. Let's pick up some yellow. Let's do that one. Maybe this one. Yellow's a good color for when you're trying to add like an extremely bright splash of something, because yellow's a very bright color. Let's do this one, yellow. And let's see, if I do that one, will I have enough for the rest? Let's do this one. Okay. And then we just have green and blue, but if I'm paying attention, I've already done blue over there floating away. So really I have 3 left that I need to make one of these other colors. So let's see what the green looks like. Here. And here. And sure, why not? Let's do this one. I really like this green color. I don't want to do all 4 of these green. Let's do this green. Here. Oh yeah, I still, well no, I have blue and purple there. So let's do this one. And let's do, oh, let's see. Let's do that one. I don't know, we could probably get away with doing this one. All right, so now I have 3 white leaves left that I need to turn another color. So let's do blue by the tree trunk. My favorite color is purple, but I don't want to throw off what's happening in the painting by turning everything purple. Whoops, this one's getting all messy because my brush is all wet. It's dripping everywhere and smearing everywhere, but that's right. Okay, so that one's blue. Let's turn that one blue. And, oh sure, why not? Just turn that one blue. Okay. All right, so this is when we take a step back. We make sure that we've covered and fixed everything that we intended to, and we see if we are finished. So let's take a closer look at it too. So you can see how I have left some spots that are still kind of white, like that. I don't really mind those. I think that they give it a little bit more depth by having almost like a two-toned thing going on. And then we have our water. We have our moon and our stars. And then we look at it. It's best to look at your paintings as the whole picture. And there it is. And there we have it, stars. There is my finished product, my finished painting. So what do you think? If you were watching just for fun, I hope you enjoyed it. If you were watching and you were creating something along with me, please post it on social media and tag me at Art with Miss Olms on either Twitter or Instagram, or please email me your picture at kaylaolms@wsdr4.org. I want to see what everybody out there has created. So again, if you have created this along with me, I want to see what you came up with. So please share that with me. Share it with everybody else if you would like to on your social medias. And I'll see you in the next one.